My name is Paul Marcil. I was in the United States Army. I served from December 1967 to December 1969. I was a classically trained drummer. And so I thought I was going to wind up in the Army band, but he rejected me on the terms that I was left-handed. I left the band room and they reclassified me as infantry. And so that kind of changed the whole course of my military experience. I was deployed to Vietnam on June the 8th of 1968. Matter of fact, when I got my papers, I actually looked it up on a globe because I didn't even know where it was. When you first go in country in Vietnam, when you went there, unlike the other wars, you didn't go there with a company of guys. You went there basically by yourself. I was essentially dropped in the middle of a jungle by myself and waited there until basically the enemy, walked within earshot of me, and I would essentially call in artillery down on top of them and me. That was kind of my mission. And so I had many close calls. It was pretty terrifying to be killing people in that way. The people in my position, the life expectancy in 1968 was 2 weeks. That's about how long they lasted. Either they killed themselves because they weren't adequately trained, or they were killed because I was essentially in the middle of the jungle with a knife and a radio. During the course of my tour, they used extensively a defoliant, which was called Agent Orange. They had huge 50-gallon barrels that they crop sprayed from helicopters, over the jungle when they would drop in this stuff, and I was like totally, gray, covered with all of this stuff. I said, boy, I don't think this can be good for me. Obviously, it wasn't good for anybody. To this day, all of the areas that they dusted in Vietnam, nothing grows there. So I came back to the United States in late 1969, and my older brother took me out to a bar to celebrate. One of the things one of his buddies asked me was how many babies that I killed. I ran out of the bar. I immediately realized from that point on, this was going to be something that I would never be able to talk about. I essentially kept my whole service career a secret until 1998, 28 years. In 1998, I began to have debilitating symptoms that at first I thought was Lyme disease. I was in terrible pain. Got to the point where I couldn't move, couldn't get out of bed, was completely paralyzed. Went to see a whole bunch of specialists. After a while, they basically designated that I had rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the body. In 2002, I had my left hip replaced because it had deteriorated. In 2004, I had my right hip replaced because it completely deteriorated. In 2008, my left knee completely deteriorated. In 2009, my right knee completely deteriorated. I could no longer work. I became completely unemployable. Couldn't work. I basically couldn't get out of bed most days. I was in tremendous amount of pain. All along, I'm going to the VA system. I'm trying to make a case that this autoimmune disease was service-connected and it was brought on by Agent Orange. I met with several VA advocates at the VA hospital in West Haven, Connecticut, and they essentially all told me that rheumatoid arthritis was not considered to be a recognized service-connected disability connected to Agent Orange. The only thing that they would recognize connected to Agent Orange was any kind of a cancer or a brain disease, which I did not have. And so they categorically rejected any claims that I made. Our very first conversation, we were on the phone for 1 hour. Not that I have a lot of experience with lawyers, but you know, nobody I ever heard of calls a lawyer and gets the lawyer. You pick up the phone and you call Greg Rada and he answers the phone. I mean, his secretary, he doesn't have a secretary. His assistant, he doesn't have an assistant. You call Greg Rada, you get Greg Rada. And I don't care if you call him at 10 o'clock at night or Sunday afternoon, you get Greg Rada. He's a man I never spoke to in my life, and he stayed on the phone with me for an hour. He reviewed my whole entire case. He told me after that hour conversation that he felt that I had every basis in the world to file a claim against the Veterans Administration. And he was using the same facts that the VA had turned me down numerous times for. He took those same facts, shot holes through everything that the VA counselors were trying to deny my claims for. And in 2 years' time, he was able to obtain compensation for me for what happened to me in Vietnam. It changed my life, because up until that time, I really felt, you know, like my life was over. And that was going to be my legacy. He really, he takes every one of these things very personally. He's a veteran himself. He's a disabled veteran. He's flown over 100 missions in Iraq and Afghanistan himself. So, number one, I felt like right from the very first conversation I had with him that I was speaking to a military buddy who understood me, who understood what it's like to be in the military. And I have so much respect for what he does, because I have so much empathy for all these young guys coming back, because I know how difficult their life is going to be. I would recommend Attorney Gregory Rada to anyone. Anyone who would listen, I would recommend to him. I would tell them not to hesitate for 1 second to pick up the phone. My country asked me to do something for them, and I did when I was 18. And it changed the whole course of my life, because I fought demons my whole entire life. I vowed that I wouldn't become a statistic of the Vietnam War. I vowed that I would not be living under a bridge. What he did for me was so much more than just monetary compensation, which I did receive quite a bit of. What he did for me was he made my service time worthwhile. You know, I felt like what I did was honorable. And my country didn't seem to recognize that. And all I wanted ever was my country to recognize that that's what I did. And so that's what Attorney Rada did for me. And that's really all I wanted. And that's what he did for me. And it changed my life, and I will be forever grateful to him for that. I would like to publicly thank him again for saving my life. You know, I just feel like, you know, I can kind of die in peace knowing that, you know, what I did was for a good cause. I feel like I answered my country's call, and, you know, because of him, I feel like what I did was an honorable thing. And I thank him for that. There's just one other thing. This is a picture of me with two friends of mine that I was in Vietnam with. They were two good friends of mine, and they met a very, very gruesome death. And I, to this day, I feel so terrible that I wasn't there to help them, you know. It's kind of for them too. So I just wanted to thank them also for giving their life